cops beat the black woman's daughter into a vegetable. She took down the entire department. Welcome to Dusk Tales. Let's uncover what really happened. The silence in Martha's house was a living thing, a heavy, suffocating blanket woven from grief and the ghost of a daughter's laughter. It had been 6 months since her daughter, Imani, a vibrant, promising law student with a smile that could light up the darkest room, had been transformed into a silent, unseeing statue in a hospital bed. The official police report, a sterile, soulless document, told a story of resisting arrest and an unfortunate accident during a routine traffic stop. But Martha knew the truth. She saw it in the carefully omitted details, in the contradictory witness statements, in the chilling, almost casual indifference of the officers involved. She knew her daughter, her vibrant, opinionated, justice-seeking Imani, had been beaten into a coma by the very people sworn to protect her. Martha, a woman who had spent her life as a quiet, unassuming schoolteacher, a pillar of her community, was now a warrior. Her grief, a raw, gaping wound, had been forged into a weapon of unyielding resolve. Her quiet nature, once a source of comfort, now concealed a core of pure, unadulterated steel. She was no longer just a mother. She was an avenger, a seeker of a truth that the entire power structure of her city was determined to bury. The city was a place of deep, festering wounds, a place where the lines between law enforcement and a criminal enterprise had blurred into a dark, ugly gray. The police department, under the iron-fisted rule of Chief Williams, a man whose ambition was matched only by his ruthlessness, operated with an almost untouchable impunity. Williams was a master of public relations, a charismatic figure who spoke of community policing and transparency, while his officers terrorized the city's minority communities with a quiet, systemic brutality. The officers responsible for Imani's beating, a trio of known enforcers led by the notoriously volatile Sergeant Miller, were untouchable, protected by a blue wall of silence and a web of political connections that reached all the way to the mayor's office. Martha's initial attempts to seek justice through conventional channels were met with a wall of bureaucratic indifference and thinly veiled threats. Her complaints were lost, her calls went unreturned, and her visits to the police station were met with condescending smiles and vague, dismissive platitudes. The message was clear: stay quiet, accept the official story, and let it go. But Martha could not let it go. She could not let her daughter's life, her vibrant future, be reduced to a footnote in a falsified police report. She began her own investigation, a lonely, dangerous quest for the truth. She spent her days by Imani's bedside, reading to her, talking to her, her voice a steady, loving presence in the sterile silence of the hospital room. And she spent her nights in the dim glow of her computer screen, poring over public records, cross-referencing names, searching for a crack in the blue wall of silence. She was an ordinary woman, a schoolteacher, with no legal training, no powerful connections, no resources beyond her own unshakable determination. She was an underdog, a grieving mother against a powerful, corrupt machine. But she had something the police department had underestimated: the fierce, unyielding love of a mother for her child, a love that would not be silenced, a love that would not be denied. She discovered a pattern, a series of unfortunate accidents and unexplained injuries that all seemed to be connected to Sergeant Miller and his crew. She found whispers of a secret, off-the-books slush fund, of kickbacks from local businesses, of a shadow economy that thrived on intimidation and fear. She began to connect the dots, to see the outlines of a vast, sprawling conspiracy that went far beyond a single act of brutality. The initial incident, the traffic stop that had shattered her world, was not a random act of violence. It was a symptom of a deeper, more insidious disease, a cancer that had metastasized throughout the entire police department, reaching into the very heart of the city's power structure. Martha was no longer just fighting for justice for Imani. She was fighting for the soul of her city. And as she delved deeper into the darkness, she knew, with a chilling certainty, that she was not just investigating a crime. She was marking herself as a target. The forces she was challenging would not hesitate to silence her permanently. The quiet, unassuming schoolteacher was now a threat, a lone voice of truth in a city of lies. And she was about to learn just how far they would go to protect their secrets. The deeper Martha dug, the more she realized that the corruption within the police department was not just a few bad apples. It was the entire orchard, poisoned from the roots up. She discovered a web of interconnected shell corporations, all seemingly legitimate businesses that were being used to launder money from illicit activities. These companies, she found, had direct financial ties to Chief Williams, to Mayor Thompson, and to a shadowy real estate developer named Silas Sterling, a man known for his ruthless acquisition of properties in minority neighborhoods, properties that were then mysteriously rezoned for lucrative commercial development. The pattern was clear. The police, under Miller's direction, would systematically harass and intimidate residents in these targeted neighborhoods, driving down property values, forcing people to sell cheap. Sterling would then swoop in, acquire the land, and with the help of the mayor's office, turn a massive profit. It was a well-oiled machine of gentrification, fueled by fear and corruption. Martha, with her schoolteacher's meticulousness, began to compile a dossier of evidence. She spent her meager savings on a private investigator, a retired, world-weary ex-cop named Frank, who had been forced out of the department years ago for trying to expose the very same corruption. Frank, initially skeptical, was quickly won over by Martha's quiet determination and the sheer volume of evidence she had already gathered. Together, they began to build a case, piece by painstaking piece. They found a disgruntled city clerk who, under the promise of anonymity, provided them with copies of falsified zoning documents. They found a former accountant for one of Sterling's shell companies who, racked with guilt, agreed to testify about the money laundering scheme. They even found a low-level police officer, horrified by the brutality he had witnessed, who agreed to wear a wire, capturing incriminating conversations with Sergeant Miller about softening up a neighborhood for Sterling's next project. The danger was immense. Martha and Frank were operating in the shadows, constantly looking over their shoulders, their every move watched. They knew that if their investigation was discovered, the consequences would be swift and brutal. One evening, as Martha was returning home from the hospital, she found her front door ajar. Her heart pounding, she entered cautiously. Her house had been ransacked, not a robbery, but a search. Her files, her computer, everything related to her investigation had been taken. And on her living room wall, scrawled in angry red paint, were two words, "Stay quiet." The message was a clear, unambiguous threat. They knew she was getting close. They were trying to silence her. The intimidation tactic, however, had the opposite effect. The fear, which had been a constant, low hum in the background, was now overshadowed by a burning, righteous indignation. They had not just threatened her. They had violated her home, the sanctuary where she had raised her daughter. They had crossed a line. Martha, with Frank's help, moved to a secure location, a small, anonymous apartment on the other side of the city. She knew she was running out of time. The forces she was up against were powerful, ruthless, and they were closing in. She had to expose them, to bring their dark secrets into the light, before they silenced her for good. She had one last, desperate card to play. She remembered a story Imani had once told her about a young, ambitious journalist at the city's leading newspaper, a woman named Sarah, who had a reputation for fearless, investigative reporting. Sarah had a history of taking on powerful institutions, of speaking truth to power, even when it was dangerous. Martha knew it was a long shot. She had no way of knowing if Sarah would believe her, if she would be willing to risk her career, and possibly her life, to take on such a powerful and dangerous story. But she had to try. With trembling hands, she made the call, her voice a low, urgent whisper, a desperate plea for an ally in a war she could no longer fight alone. The clock was ticking. The net was closing. And Martha knew, with a chilling certainty, that this was her last, best hope for justice, for Imani, and for the soul of her city. The phone call to Sarah, the young, tenacious journalist, was a desperate, last-ditch effort, A single match struck in a vast, dark cavern of corruption. Martha, her voice a low, urgent whisper, laid out the story, the bare, brutal facts of Imani's assault, the systemic harassment, the web of financial and political corruption that she and Frank had painstakingly uncovered. Sarah, on the other end of the line, listened in stunned silence, her initial journalistic skepticism slowly giving way to a dawning, horrified realization. She had heard whispers, rumors of Chief Williams's ambition, of Sterling's ruthless business practices, but Martha's story, so detailed, so personal, so utterly devastating, connected the dots in a way she had never imagined. This wasn't just a story. It was a conspiracy, a cancer that had metastasized throughout the entire city. "I have proof, Ms. Jennings," Martha said, her voice trembling but firm. "Documents, recordings, witness testimony. But I'm out of time. They know I'm getting close. They're trying to silence me. I need your help. I need you to bring this into the light." Sarah, her reporter's instincts now on high alert, felt a surge of professional adrenaline mixed with a profound sense of moral outrage. This was the kind of story that could define a career, the kind of story that could change a city. It was also the kind of story that could get a reporter killed. "Where are you, Mrs. Johnson?" Sarah asked, her voice low, professional. "Don't tell me over the phone. Text me an address, a public place. We need to meet, and bring everything you have." The meeting took place in a small, out-of-the-way coffee shop, a neutral ground far from the prying eyes of the police or Sterling's network. Martha, her face etched with a weary determination, handed Sarah a thick dossier of files, a flash drive containing the recordings and financial records, and a handwritten list of contacts and witness statements. As Sarah pored over the evidence, her eyes widened with a mixture of awe and horror. The meticulous detail, the irrefutable proof of the corruption, was staggering. Martha, the quiet schoolteacher, had built an unassailable case against the most powerful men in the city. "This is incredible," Sarah breathed, her voice filled with a newfound respect. "You've done the work of an entire investigative team." "I did the work of a mother," Martha replied, her voice quiet but firm. "Now, I need you to do the work of a journalist. I need you to tell the world what they did to my daughter, what they're doing to this city." Sarah knew the risks. Publishing a story of this magnitude would make her a target. Chief Williams, Mayor Thompson, Silas Sterling. These were not men who would tolerate being exposed. They would fight back with everything they had. They would try to discredit her, to silence her, to destroy her. But as she looked at Martha's face, at the raw, unyielding love and the fierce, burning grief in her eyes, Sarah knew she had no choice. This was more than just a story. It was a moral imperative. "I'll do it," Sarah said, her voice ringing with a conviction that matched Martha's own. "I'll tell the story. But we have to be smart. We have to be careful. We need to release this all at once, a coordinated strike that they can't recover from." Over the next 48 hours, Sarah worked in a feverish, clandestine collaboration with Martha and Frank. They devised a plan, a multi-pronged media assault designed to overwhelm their opponents, to leave them with no room to maneuver, no time to spin the narrative. Sarah wrote the story, a long, detailed, explosive exposé that laid out the entire conspiracy, from Imani's beating to the money laundering, the land grabs, the political corruption. She backed up every claim with irrefutable evidence from Martha's dossier. She also prepared a series of short, powerful video segments featuring anonymous, voice-altered testimony from the city clerk, the former accountant, and the brave, young police officer who had worn the wire. The plan was to release everything simultaneously: a front-page story in the city's leading newspaper, a lead segment on the evening news, and a massive social media blitz, all timed to hit at the exact moment of a major public event. The mayor's annual State of the City address, a grand, self-congratulatory affair where all the key players would be present, trapped in the harsh glare of the public eye. The tension was immense. They were a small, clandestine team, a grieving mother, a retired cop, and a young journalist, going up against a powerful, entrenched criminal enterprise. The stakes were impossibly high. Failure meant not just the end of their careers, but a very real threat to their lives. As the day of the mayor's address dawned, a sense of grim, terrifying resolve settled over them. The final pieces were in place. The trap was set. They had one shot, one chance to expose the truth, to bring down the entire corrupt machine. The fate of a city, and the hope for justice for Imani, rested on their shoulders. The quiet schoolteacher, the weary cop, and the fearless journalist were about to unleash a firestorm. The grand ballroom of the city's most opulent hotel was a sea of tailored suits, glittering jewels, and forced, self-congratulatory smiles. The annual State of the City address was the pinnacle of the city's social and political calendar, a carefully orchestrated performance designed to showcase the supposed prosperity and progress under Mayor Thompson's leadership. The air was thick with the scent of expensive perfume, catered hors d'oeuvres, and the low, self-satisfied hum of the city's elite. On the dais, seated in plush, high-backed chairs, were the architects of the city's corruption. Mayor Thompson, his face a mask of benevolent civic pride; Chief Williams, his uniform crisp, his posture radiating an unshakable authority; and Silas Sterling, the predatory developer, basking in the glow of his own immense wealth and influence. They were the kings of this carefully constructed kingdom, oblivious to the storm that was about to break over their heads. In the back of the ballroom, disguised as a member of the catering staff, was Frank, the retired cop, his eyes, sharp and observant, scanning the room, a small, encrypted earpiece his only connection to Sarah and Martha. Sarah was in the news van parked discreetly outside, her fingers poised over the keyboard, ready to unleash the digital firestorm. And Martha, her heart a frantic, pounding drum, sat at home, watching the live broadcast, her hands clasped in a silent, desperate prayer. The mayor strode to the podium, a self-satisfied smirk on his lips. "My friends, my fellow citizens," he began, his voice a smooth, practiced baritone. "It is my distinct honor to stand before you today and declare that the state of our great city is strong. We are a city of progress, of opportunity, of a shared vision for a brighter future." He launched into a long, rambling speech, filled with platitudes and half-truths, a masterclass in political spin. He spoke of revitalized neighborhoods, the very neighborhoods Sterling had acquired through intimidation and fear. He spoke of a safer, more secure city, a city where the police department operated as a private army for the corrupt elite. He was painting a picture of a utopia, a carefully constructed lie that was about to be shattered. Just as the mayor reached the crescendo of his speech, his voice booming with false sincerity, Sarah gave the signal. "Now, Frank," she whispered into her comms unit. Frank, moving with a quiet, practiced efficiency, slipped a small, innocuous-looking flash drive into the port of the ballroom's main audiovisual system, a system he had discreetly gained access to earlier in the day. On the massive screen behind the mayor, where a series of flattering, pre-approved images of the city were meant to be displayed, a new image appeared. It was a stark black-and-white photograph of Imani, her beautiful, vibrant face smiling out at the stunned audience. A collective gasp swept through the ballroom. The mayor faltered, his speech dying on his lips. Chief Williams's face went rigid. Sterling's smirk vanished, replaced by a look of pure, incredulous fury. Before anyone could react, the audio system, which had been broadcasting the mayor's booming voice, was hijacked. A new sound filled the ballroom, a sound so raw, so chilling, it seemed to suck all the air out of the room. It was the recording from the young officer's wire. The voice of Sergeant Miller, clear and undeniable, filled the hall, his words a venomous testament to his own brutality. "Yeah," she resisted. Miller's voice sneered, the recording amplified to a deafening volume. Resisted a little attitude adjustment. She got what she deserved. And her mother? If she doesn't shut her mouth, she'll get the same. Chief Williams wants this buried. And what the chief wants, the chief gets. The raw, undeniable truth of the recording hit the ballroom like a physical blow. The audience, the city's elite, who had for so long chosen to ignore the whispers, the rumors, the quiet suffering of the city's marginalized communities, were now confronted with the ugly, brutal reality of the system they had supported. At that exact moment, every phone in the room buzzed simultaneously. The story, Sarah's explosive expose, had just gone live. The front-page article, the video testimonies, the irrefutable financial documents, all of it was now public, a digital tidal wave of truth that was crashing down on the corrupt empire of Williams, Thompson, and Sterling. Chaos erupted. The ballroom, moments before a scene of self-congratulatory calm, was now a whirlwind of shouted questions, flashing cameras, and panicked, desperate attempts to flee. The kings, their crowns askew, were trapped in the wreckage of their own lies. The immediate aftermath of the expose was a maelstrom of righteous fury and spectacular public disgrace. The live broadcast of the State of the City address, which had been intended as a coronation of the city's corrupt leadership, instead became the scene of their public execution. The recording of Sergeant Miller's confession, broadcast to the entire city, was a damning, undeniable indictment of the police department's brutality and Chief Williams's direct complicity. The simultaneous release of Sarah's meticulously researched article, with its irrefutable evidence of financial corruption and political collusion, was the final, killing blow. The city, which had for so long been lulled into a state of complacent ignorance, was now wide awake, its eyes open to the deep, systemic rot that had been festering in its heart. The ballroom descended into chaos. Reporters, their faces alight with the thrill of a career-defining story, swarmed the dais, their microphones and cameras shoved into the stunned, horrified faces of Mayor Thompson, Chief Williams, and Silas Sterling. The city's elite, the wealthy and powerful who had for so long benefited from the corrupt system, now scattered, their faces a mixture of fear and dawning complicity. They were rats deserting a sinking ship. Mayor Thompson, his face a pasty white, tried to stammer out a denial, a pathetic attempt to distance himself from the scandal. But his words were drowned out by the roar of the crowd, the shouts of "Resign! Resign!" Chief Williams, his face a mask of pure, unadulterated rage, tried to bluster, to threaten, to assert his authority, but his power had evaporated. He was no longer the untouchable chief. He was a disgraced criminal, his crimes exposed for all the world to see. He was quickly surrounded by a group of grim-faced state troopers who had been prepositioned outside the ballroom, ready to act the moment the story broke. Chief Williams, the lead trooper, stated, his voice calm but unyielding, "You are under arrest for conspiracy, obstruction of justice, and multiple counts of official misconduct." The sight of the city's powerful police chief being led away in handcuffs sent a shockwave through the city, a clear, unambiguous message that the old, corrupt order was crumbling. Silas Sterling, the predatory developer, his face a mask of furious disbelief, also tried to flee, but he too was intercepted. The federal authorities, who had been conducting their own parallel investigation, spurred on by the evidence Sarah had provided, now moved in, their badges glinting, their presence a testament to the fact that his crimes had crossed state lines, reaching into the realm of federal jurisdiction. He was arrested on charges of racketeering, financial fraud, and conspiracy. His vast, ill-gotten empire, built on the suffering of the city's most vulnerable, was about to be dismantled piece by piece. Back at her temporary apartment, Martha watched the events unfold on her television screen, tears of profound, overwhelming relief streaming down her face. She saw the faces of the men who had destroyed her daughter's life, their power stripped away, their lies exposed, their arrogance replaced by a raw, desperate fear. It was not a moment of triumph, but of a deep, sorrowful, and long-overdue justice. She had done it. The quiet, unassuming schoolteacher, the grieving mother, had taken on a corrupt, powerful machine and, against all odds, had won. Frank, the retired cop, stood beside her, a rare, genuine smile on his weary face. "You did it, Martha," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "You took down the whole damn department. You gave Imani a voice. You gave this city a voice. Sarah, the fearless journalist, was now a national hero, her name synonymous with courageous, investigative reporting. Her story had not just exposed a local scandal. It had ignited a national conversation about police brutality, about systemic corruption, about the power of a free press to hold the powerful accountable. In the days and weeks that followed, the city began the slow, painful process of healing and reform. A special prosecutor was appointed. The police department was placed under federal oversight. A new, progressive mayor was elected in a landslide victory, promising a new era of transparency and accountability. The blue wall of silence had been shattered, and in its place, a fragile but persistent hope for a better, more just city began to bloom. The fall of the city's corrupt regime was swift and absolute. The federal and state investigations, fueled by the mountain of irrefutable evidence Martha, Frank, and Sarah had compiled, moved with unprecedented speed. Mayor Thompson, facing a mountain of charges, resigned in disgrace, his political career over. Chief Williams, his reputation in tatters, was convicted on multiple counts and sentenced to a long prison term, a stunning, symbolic victory for a community that had for so long lived in fear of his department's unchecked power. Sergeant Miller and his crew were also arrested and faced trial. Their long history of brutality finally brought to light. Silas Sterling's real estate empire crumbled under the weight of federal indictments and civil lawsuits. His ill-gotten properties were seized, and a new community land trust was established to return the land to the neighborhoods he had terrorized, a powerful act of restorative justice. The city, in the aftermath, was a place transformed. The air, once thick with a quiet, pervasive fear, now felt lighter, clearer. People started talking to each other again, their voices no longer hushed whispers, but open, honest conversations about the future of their city. The police department, under new, reform-minded leadership and strict federal oversight, began the long, arduous process of rebuilding trust with the community it had once oppressed. It was a slow, difficult journey, but for the first time in a generation, there was a genuine sense of hope, a belief that a more just and equitable city was possible. Martha, the quiet warrior who had started it all, retreated from the public spotlight. She had no desire for fame or recognition. Her fight had never been about her. It had always been about Imani. She returned to her daughter's bedside, her heart filled not with the burning rage of before, but with a quiet, profound sense of peace. Justice had been served. The truth had been told. She continued to read to Imani, to talk to her, to fill the sterile silence of the hospital room with her unwavering love. And then, one afternoon, as she was reading a passage from Imani's favorite book of poetry, she felt a faint, almost imperceptible squeeze of her hand. She looked down, her heart stopping. Imani's fingers, which had been still for so long, had moved. A single tear traced a path down Imani's cheek. It was a miracle, a small, fragile, but undeniable sign of life, of a spirit returning from the long, dark abyss. The doctors were cautiously optimistic. It was the beginning of a long, uncertain road to recovery, but it was a beginning. The spark that the bullies had tried to extinguish had not been snuffed out. It had just been waiting, in the quiet darkness, for the light of justice to return. Martha, her heart overflowing with a gratitude so immense it was almost painful, knew that her fight had been worth it. She had not just taken down a corrupt department. She had brought her daughter back from the brink. Her love, a force more powerful than any political machine, had triumphed. Sarah, the journalist, went on to win a Pulitzer Prize for her reporting, her name now a byword for journalistic integrity and courage. She used her newfound platform to continue to shine a light on injustice, to give a voice to the voiceless, her career a testament to the power of a single, fearless story. Frank, the retired cop, found a new sense of purpose, working as a consultant for a newly formed civilian oversight board. His experience and his unwavering moral compass, now a vital asset in the city's ongoing journey of reform. The three of them, the grieving mother, the weary cop, and the fearless journalist, had formed an unlikely, unbreakable bond, a testament to the power of ordinary people to achieve extraordinary things when they stand together for what is right. The narrator's voice comes in, full of warmth and inspiration. It is a story that reminds us that in the face of overwhelming power and systemic injustice, the courage of a single, determined heart can be the most powerful weapon of all. Martha Johnson, a woman who was told to stay quiet, to accept the unacceptable, chose to fight. She proved that the love of a mother is a force of nature, capable of moving mountains, of toppling empires, of bringing a corrupt city to its knees. Her journey is a testament to the fact that justice is not something that is given. It is something that must be taken, fought for, and won, often at great personal cost. And in her unwavering pursuit of truth, she did not just find justice for her daughter. She ignited a revolution. She healed a city, and she reminded us all that even in the darkest of times, the light of a single courageous soul can be enough to illuminate the path to a better, more just world.